So welcome to this session. I'm glad I didn't see many hands when people were asked if they're hungry. So hopefully our ears will still, be working. So this session is about the customer experience, and not just in service, but in terms of storytelling. And as you've heard of the stories of Victoria and Anthony, I think they're a perfect panel for this. So I'm Yvonne Machira. I am a wine enthusiast. And as Jiro has said, she pushed me to do level 2 in 2023. And it was a very, very interesting experience, especially given I was the only person in class who was not in the industry per se. I was in the industry as I had this morning of the lips. I also had throat share. So this is the panel that will be talking about throat share and those kinds of things, because at the end of the day, that's where you want your wine to end up, right? And you also want the person to enjoy the wine. So, the panel, wow. Victoria wears many hats, as I learned yesterday. She's the head of culinary, product development and brand at CharChoma. She's also the founder of Wine Mascot. Perhaps you'll tell us more about that as you speak. And her experience spans kitchens, front of house, brand consulting, business side of food. And from what I understand about Victoria, what is her, standout ability is how she's able to connect the customer, touch points across the full journey, from the plate to the pairing. Yes, I'm eating tilapia today. What wine do I drink it with? I'm eating Nyama Choma. And she's really keen on how we think about local food and wine. Then we have Anthony Muturi, so founder and head sommelier, live and wine shop, a boutique wine space known for its warm hospitality, WSET Level 3 certified, currently pursuing his Level 4 diploma. He also serves on the board of the Sommeliers Association of Kenya. So he's bringing a lot of knowledge around how to, basically educate and inspire when it comes to the customer. And of course, we were to have Soraya, but unfortunately, she's unable to join us. So I'll start with you, Victoria. Your experience is really, really broad, and I'm so glad to hear you. You went through the throes of WSET as well. So you've gone from front of house to sales, brand building. How has this helped you design better consumer experiences?
I think working across the full spectrum, from the kitchen to the front of house to brand stories, you're able to get a 360 view of what the consumer really wants and what makes big hospitality brands tick. And that comes with conversations. So I think sometimes we don't really engage our guests when it comes to crafting consumer journeys, because we just come up with this list of what touch points are supposed to produce what. And then we leave it at that, and we train teams, and that's about it. But we don't engage our customers and come up with an experience that is co-created with the customer. So I think coming from the kitchen, I can be able to ask questions, and I can be able to know, how do I involve this, and how do I put this in a customer journey?
Mm-hmm. What have been the challenges with that?
Breaking down the customer's problems. In the wine space, the customer comes and tells you, I don't like this wine, it's bad, right? Mm-hmm. So what do most of us do? You just pick the wine and go and tell the sommelier or at the bar, okay, this wine is, it's bad. We should find a way to remove it off the list or contact the supplier, which is usually what happens, right? But we don't ask questions. It's like, okay, talk to me about it. Or it was bitter, then you're able to know, okay. Mm-hmm. So it's subjective. Yeah. It's that we could have asked more questions and be able to tailor make this, this wine to what the palate is.
Yeah, and actually that's something I've experienced. So if you don't want to drink a house wine in an establishment and then you want to buy a wine by the bottle, other than Vivino, you have very little knowledge around what the wine is, and most likely in the establishment you're in, they are not able to actually educate you on actually what's your palate like, and these are the wines we have that might match that. So what do you think we can do better in terms of before that bottle is opened or even before it's brought? Yeah. Actually, the moment you bring the menu to the consumer, such that you're not now having to have that kind of situation where wine is returned, but actually, we could return it. I always see us suffering through it. But yes. Yeah, we always say you test a little bit, and I'm like, okay, so if I don't like it, I can return it. And they go this. Yeah. What do you tell us more? Yeah.
I'd say train teams to ask questions, one, and to tell stories, because, wine bottles. It's all about the stories, right? And then train teams to ask questions and listen and be able to identify and place. It's like a real life algorithm. Right? When the customer tells you, I want something that is light or, medium body, or they wouldn't have the words to say medium. They'll just tell you, "Isikuwe kali sana," and you'll be able to place what that is. They'll tell you, I don't want something too sweet, but I want something that is isikuwe kali sana. And you can be able to have that conversation with the client. Also, I think the reason why wine tastings are effective is because there's somebody actually telling you what to expect. So because we don't know what to expect, then, automatically you just rule it out. But you have an experience with the customer. You can be able to guide them through what to expect and what this wine tastes like. And I think you build much more sustainable relationships that way and widen the scope for new wine drinkers.
Okay, I'll let your throat rest for a bit so throat share is not affected. Let me come to you, Anthony. How do you move a customer from curious to confident when it comes to wine? Like someone walks in, they're hesitant, probably even they're viewing wine as this, they're probably more confident in a supermarket than a restaurant. But how do you move that journey?
Thank you guys for your time. I want to touch on Victoria's thing before I answer the question. I know very many restaurants and on-trade places. By show of hands, how many glasses of wine have been returned in your premises and the client says the wine is off? By a show of hands. Have you ever experienced this? By a show of hands. I think everyone has gotten experiences like that. Yeah? So, coming back to your question, how do you turn a client from curious to confident? Confidence starts with, the first thing, confidence starts with the wine steward or the sommelier. That's the first thing. If a client sees that you're jittery, you don't know what you're talking about, they lose confidence immediately. Like the first 5 minutes or 2 minutes, you have to inspire confidence. How do you inspire confidence? Okay, Wanjiru, Victoria, they're always on my case. Tony, hey, you don't wear a suit. You're just wearing a Puma. You're just wearing maybe a shirt. You know what I mean? So, confidence is the way you talk to the client. The client comes in, says, there's a saying that says the customer is always king. But for me, I don't believe you're the king of your establishment. So you have to inspire your team to be confident. Confidence is knowledge. Confidence is not being a geek to the client, but just wrapping the stories behind the wine. There's always a story behind the wine. Like, let me give you an example. There's a wine, Viagalegen. Yeah? You don't need to say the whole thing, the region, everything, but just say something like, this is the wine, Nelson Mandela's favorite wine. You've gotten the client already.
Yeah.
Or like Block Lippen, 1682. I told my staff, I don't need you to know what Chenin Blanc is, the RS, the residual sugar, the acidity, the everything, how it tastes, whether it tastes of lime or all those pepper and citrus and chamomile. I don't need you guys to know about that. Just capture the client's, what do you call it? Capture his attention. 1682. That's when the winery was formed. It was the first winery in South Africa. So just curious to confident. Confidence starts with you. I'm not saying you just come up with lies to the client. There are various wine stewards that I've gone to establishments and I just keep quiet because I don't want to make the wine steward feel less than. But the thing is, for me, knowledge is key, but how you break down the knowledge starts with your confidence. Don't start just I'm sure Victoria is confident, but when she began, you are less confident. Yeah. Same thing with me. The area I'm in, we have a lot of experts, a lot of UN guys, Rwanda guys, well-educated guys. So my team was always scared. But what turned them around was seeing the team leader confident, and that rubbed onto them. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, just sticking on to that point around the wine attendant, and I think we've all experienced this when you're on the other end of the table and someone is telling you about a wine and you're just like, that's not true. So in your establishment, how do you actually sensitize your teams? How do you ensure that they're actually communicating the message, that you want from a retail perspective to the consumer?
Ladies first or my turn? Ladies first.
You can go ahead. Sorry, I can chip in.
Okay, so education and retail. I think it's very important. It's very important to spend at least a week, a day a week. So a day has 24 hours. You break it down into 5 days or 7 days. So basically, 24 hours divided by 6 days a week or 7 days a week. So that's the time you take with your team to invest in your team members. So like me, I always have a meeting every day for at least 30 minutes with my team. Or what are your wine goals? What are the goals for the day? What have you set any? Give me 5 wines on the menu that you want to sell today. So everyone has to, and it's not necessarily sweet wines. I'm not hating on sweet wines. I'm not hating on any other wines, but I just want them to sell something unique. So something the client has never discovered on their own. Yeah. So yeah, basically it's just invest in your team. Invest in your team. And also another thing that I can say is the bigger the wine list, the bigger the win. If your wine list just has like 10 items, honestly, I'll get bored. Like 3 wines by the glass or 2 wines by the glass. And restaurants are notorious for cutting costs that way. So for me, I was a visionary. Though I was not a visionary, but it's been 10 years in business. So the first 2 years, I encountered all the wine is off. I know about wine. The client is belittling. Before it was belittling the song, but these days your confidence in your education makes that. That's why I'm saying the customer is not always king. You're the king. You're the song. You're the guy who put in the hours. You're the guys who put in the hours. You're the guys who order the wines. You're the guys who do everything. The customer is just part of your ecosystem. So just for me, I'd say the bigger the wine list, the bigger the win. And yeah, and just keep educating you. Don't get tired. Yes. So
Yeah. I agree with him. I think for me, the biggest thing is, educating your teams and having a wine culture. I think wine advocacy is the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
And I think, allows us to sell more wine, one, but also create a culture of wine with our establishment, whether that's retail or hospitality.
So what does experience mean to you when it comes to your restaurants? And just help us understand or just visualize it. What exactly does that mean?
I think beyond the different touch points that you'd be able to get, obviously, when you come to a restaurant, for me, it's what lingers on after the meal, the emotional takeaway, because that's what we ascribe to different brands that we love. That's why in the morning when Victoria was saying, you know that when you go there, Wangi is there, right? That's the emotional takeaway. So everything that you do, whether that's curating wine lists, food menus, wine experiences, it's all in the service of what the customer feels.
Yeah. So what advice do you give to brands who are struggling to keep hospitality alive from that kind of perspective?
I think hospitality should feel warm. I don't know what that makes sense. I think in education we've taken away the warmth from hospitality, and I feel like we need to bring it back. It needs to feel personalized, and I think investing or putting human connection above service is something that would help to keep the hospitality.
Yeah. Anthony, what's the most surprising request you had in the shop that turned into a customer experience win?
I think also the most I'm just going back to my notes, which Yvonne made us. Yeah. So let me go to my notes here. Okay. Sawa. So that's the question that turned into a CX win. I think Kina Victoria talked about it the day before. It was a hard question, but an easy question at the same time. So let's go. Let me turn into a teacher here. So I'll ask next one. What is natural wine? Natural wine.
I believe natural wine is wine that has been made in non-interventionist, or so to have additives, so say sulfites and the likes, like
Okay.
just the raw grape juice, and that's what you're putting in the bottle.
Okay.
So it's unfined, unfiltered, and unstabilized, and all that. So Petinat, for example, or Petinat Natural would be a natural wine.
Okay. So Joy, I can see your hand up. What is natural wine?
Sorry, it was actually
Oh, okay, Helen.
How to say natural wine is wine that has not been fermented with produced yeast. It's fermented with natural yeast.
What's organic wine?
Organic wine is wine that
What's biodynamic wine?
dynamic is biodynamic and organic are the same thing.
Okay.
Organic wine is wine that has not been produced with chemicals. Yes.
Okay.
he needed to land with his point though.
Okay, one more answer, then I'll land.
I've done research on this word and that definition because I believe that wine is defined and described. So none of them are wrong, Helen and Nick. But here again, you have Stella Cascatqual, and it's written sweet, natural wine. Is it really? No. So what is this natural wine? So it's always good to understand the raw matter of the context, because it's quite debatable. Why do they put it there? I even asked the guys at the winery, and they stutter. We don't make it here, we import it, but they stutter. What is natural wine? It's a very good question you're asking, because even consumers now, they are really into, some are into fats, some are into health issues. So it's good that you're having this conversation. So that was my comment. I don't have an answer as to what is natural wine. I mean, maybe what Nixon was saying, but it's quite debatable.
Okay, so I see you, Joy. I see you. We'll save you for session 2. The session after this one.
So the client came, oh, do you have natural wines? Oh man, I was just like, no, I don't have wines with minimal intervention. I don't have wines with no sulfite use. I don't. So that question made me turn the client from a natural wine drinker to an organic wine drinker, and they've always now stayed they've been into organic wines ever since. But that is what turned coming to Yvonne's question. The question that I was asked about natural wine turned me to do my research and turned the client into an organic wine drinker. And ever since, they've been an organic wine drinker. Yes.
Oh, wow.
That's great. Victoria, do you have any similar experience?
I think for me, it's opening the cellar. So most people go to the south coast or pass all the way past Mombasa and go to Kilifi and we were having a conversation about this a few minutes ago. So we opened a wine cellar and we wanted to think about, how do we ensure that the percentage of our wine drinkers are about 5% of, our alcohol consumers. And a lot of them are sweet wine drinkers. And opening the cellar and putting sommeliers to guide through instead of giving them a menu made a huge difference. Now, all of a sudden, our sweet wine drinkers are the ones now drinking like entry-level Pinot Noir. And that was a huge win for us because it meant that we could include more suppliers, put more things on our wine list. Yeah.
Speaking of Pinot Noir, you have a theory around pairing it with Gigiri. And the reason I want to ask that question is because of perception, and this has been spoken about throughout the day. Perception around how wine should be drunk, perception around, you need a cheese board, you need this, you need to be in this kind of place. And, and we're learning that unless we're adaptable to the drinking culture in this country, then, we'll be at a loss. So tell us about how you actually encourage people around thinking about wine with what we actually eat and not what we actually read is supposed to be eaten with wine.
I think in the journey of making wine feel less elitist, I started thinking about how can we use local pairings, because I work in CharChoma, which is an African elevated style restaurant. And our meals, it's nyama choma with something else. So how can I ensure that people are having elevated experiences? So it means that we need to put local pairings that are relatable. So when you think about Gigiri, you just think about, it's just Gigiri, right? But what if we break it down to how you break down wine, right? So you get, for example, when you think about the beans, you get something creamy, right? When you think about the corn, you think about something nutty, and how can you be able to explain this to a customer and actually pair that with wine?
Wow, fantastic. We want to come to the audience now. And happy to take any questions, but also moving away from the lens of the wine industry, thinking about yourself as a wine consumer. I'd also be keen to hear an experience you've had in Kenya that stuck with you when it came to wine, and why. And what lessons can we take when we are creating consumer experiences based on what you had?
Okay, mine is just a follow-up of her pairing, and very much into adjusting and reclassifying how we pick up the notes, and then now aligning them to the notes that are written. So in the office, there was one wine which was not so easy to pair with a lot of things. Okay, I'm not saying that we were the last end Kenyan food, but we decided to do a lab session in the office, and we got now pilau, all that, to see how it would play off. And that particular wine went with cabbage, which was very interesting, and it went so well. So cabbage and also a classic Kenyan meat stew. And so that was really exciting also for the team to actually break. For me, moments when a mindset is broken, I feel is a huge success. So that's just a moment I remember.
I drink a lot at home, and of course at home I'm not having filet mignon and the like. So true, we eat a lot of that matumbo and all that kind of gina sauce, matoke, and what banangi. Sorry, I'm coming to you. Yeah, give me an example of like Ugandan food. Matoke and gina sauce.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pasted meat, pasted fish, everything pasted.
You see that kind of thing, right? It's chili.
So again, I'll address I'll echo your sentiment on pairing and Jabet. So at Kwang, we have imported brands and we have local brands. So we get the juice for Caprice outside, and then we come and blend it here. Now, we were running a campaign, and that's why also Richard sells a lot of Caprice. We were running a campaign on how to elevate this drink. Why? Because it's wine in a box. So I'm the consultant there. So I said, let's pair this wine with African food, with Kenyan food. So lo and behold, in the brainstorm, someone said, no, Lena will never approve of it. So Lena is our ND. So I asked them, is Lena the consumer? No. Who's the consumer? The person in Fukana, the Mzee in Morana, the person in Nakuru, the person in Kisumu. That's a consumer for car price, isn't it? Someone who doesn't want to hide and put the wine in a glass because they don't want to be seen drinking a box wine. So we also went to the level of doing above the line. So we flighted a few billboards and the campaign worked and it's working. That's one of our bestseller. So in fact, the bestseller by volume is the two Tetra Pak wines. Why? Because we've demystified this analogy that wine has to be drunk with cheese. And that's Mzungu. How about us?
Yeah.
So we are also eliminating the would-be consumer because the extract market is just a very little percentage of who we sell to. Who do we sell to? We sell to the other guys. Okay. So in as much as we're doing this, let's also try and find ways of getting more locals. You are Shosho, you are Kuka, and yeah.
So actually, before we even come to the next person, you've awoken a point in me. Our drinking culture is very quantity driven. So, you order whatever beers and you just see a table full of beers. And wine cannot be drunk like that. It's easy to drink 10 beers, but if you're drinking 10 bottles of wine and you're not in an ambulance, kudos to you. So really, in terms of the people in this room, what are we doing in terms of thinking around how we can shift the drinking culture when it comes to wine, and also with the understanding that as we are trying to get people to drink more wine, we need to tell them, you see, the way you can drink 10 Heinekens here, with wine you can't do that. You need to savor it, you need to do this, which is why I guess there's a difficulty around marketing wine for the party scene, because party scene is the long haul, but really I think we can keep thinking around how this can work. But yeah, curious to hear as the hands were coming up, I think I'd seen Vicky's hand up. Yeah.
We moved on from caprice or caprice. Yes. Let's move there. Okay, so I think we must agree that anyone drinking wine is above 18 years old. And especially this new generation, the minute you go with don't do this with wine, unawapoteza. We can just encourage people to consume differently. And for me, what I think the language that speaks to all generations is a bottle of wine needs to be shared. And once you share the wine, yes, you'll consume 5 bottles of wine, but if you're 6 of you at a table, you'll have only drunk less than 300 ml per person, 150. Well, my mathematics is, but I'm more of encouraging people to share, to drink with food so that it slows them down. And also if you order wine by the glass, then you want to be ensuring that it's the sommelier pouring for the person, because then they have to wait, they have to pace themselves, they're waiting for the guy to come and pour for them, as opposed to if I'm pouring it myself, then I'm going to drink really fast. So pacing them. But even in the same breath, I think we were talking about food and wine pairing. In 2021 we did a lot of around pairing food, Kenyan food with wine. And actually the trend at the time was to work with the chefs and encourage them to incorporate a Kenyan dish in the menu when you're doing food and wine pairing. I think we've lost that at the moment. I don't know what's driving that, but remember the chefs at Tamarind, the chefs at that Nyamamama place, and a few other places. So that's something as well we can encourage, because our food is not also to be rushed. It's not like a burger that you chop through. Unakula pole pole, unakunywa pole pole, and I think we will have hit the goal that you're talking about.
Yeah. Are you going to talk about Lana's Africa? Okay, something else.
Something else.
Okay, but then
But just around this conversation, I'm used to standing, so I'll stand. So there's something that came from the panel, and Vicky has spoken about it equally as Kevin. It's called co-creation. Okay, so the one now is not about pushing people towards a product, okay? But can we have a conversation with the customer and say, how do you want to enjoy your wine, okay? Okay, so where I work, the Gen Zs are there, and that is a conversation in this room, okay? So they don't want that bougie bottle of wine. They want to have fun, but remember they're intelligent. they know that if they take too much of it, it's not going to go well with them. Okay. So the conversation between me and them is, how do you want to consume it? And funny enough, they want it in their cocktails and things like that. It's very funny. Yeah. And some of them even tell me, I don't want my wine in a wine glass because I'm clubbing or I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing. So I want to be safe, maybe with a tumbler and all that. So from a seller point of view, would you tell your client not to have their wine in a tumbler? Do you want to make the sale or you want to follow the rules?
Yeah.
Sorry, but then maybe also talk about your involvement with the, coming to Sylvia's earlier point. I promise that she will say something about, you worked with schools from everywhere for the competition you held last year.
I know Wanjiru is already doing it somewhere, RHTI, but it's something in my head that it's still in the pipeline where we want to go the whole country and see some of your brands supporting this venture. So we go to Kakamega with Maya Wines or with whatever brand it is, and we see if those kids down there know how to survive, know how to all these things. We don't have to wait for them to come to Nairobi. How else does your brand get to Kisumu or Kisii? Okay, it's through those kids. Remember, they are the future sommeliers.
Okay. Yes, and then finally, then we'll come back to you to wrap it up. Right? To wrap it up. Yeah. Remember, there is the afternoon session for networking. Yeah. Thank you.
Just to speak to responsible drinking, and I like the perspective you looked at it from the seller's perspective. In the many days of training back, we also used to have the same question, and I used to challenge the sellers as well. Would you let your consumer drink excessive alcohol? And most of them were like, yeah, we after the money, let them drink. And you know, it's our duty to also make them realize that taking care of your consumer guarantees you more business. What do I mean? What I mean is, if I have, let's say my consumer is called Kamau, and Kamau is there, and he's already downed 2 bottles of wine, and I can see he's going for a third, and you can already see the physical impairment of his state. It's you know, it is good to try and stop him, if not stop him, so that tomorrow they're still in a state to come back to the bar or to your account and have more wine. But if you allow them to go on and go on to a point where now they don't even understand themselves, they are too drunk, you know, they're hungover for the next 2 days, some get accidents. To the seller, we tell them that is business lost. And that business that is lost, you'll never recover. However, if you didn't sell excessively, he would continue coming and coming and coming, and it would keep going on, and that meant guaranteed business for you.
Actually, in Coca-Cola, anybody worked for fast-moving consumer goods here before? Coca-Cola actually wants you to drink a Coke a day. They make more money with you buying 1 Coca-Cola a day. They don't want you to buy 20 Coca-Colas for Sato. And that's not even an alcoholic drink. They just want you, siku moja. The same with us, actually. We'd be more profitable. I think Alpha mentioned it earlier. If it was 1 sort of glass a day, literally, we would make more money. Before I turn to you to do the last touch points, I wanted to just bring some context to your businesses and even why I thought you'd be really useful for this. The farm, CharChoma is a butchery. Sorry, I mean, it's a bit front. She called it something. Did you memorize for me? Elevated meaning, it's a butchery. So how do you go to CharChoma? You walk in, and then you have to choose your nyama. It is being sold in 100-gram portions, right? They have all cuts of meat. I know. It's the only place I can actually say I want lamb chops, sijui, pork skewers, you know, like there's lamb in all its forms, there's beef in all its forms, and you're buying in 100-gram quantities. They wait for you. And then now they go to cook it. All right. So, I mean, that's a really interesting aspect of the food side of CharChoma. And it's funny because it's a beachfront restaurant. Like after samaki, you never use it too. There's like a fish section there, but because it's really a butchery, right? So if you think about it, it's like going to Sagres, you know, but you know, in an elevated way. So if I can go to that detail with my nyama, why not wine? And I guess it's great that they're doing this cellar thing as well and stuff like that. But literally, you choose your yama like a butchery in 100-gram portions. I think that's very innovative, right? The other thing now with with Anthony is your place a kibanda. It's a container. Okay, the setting is container, right? No, really, seriously, go.
All the money.
It's rusty. It's a rusty. Hear me out. Okay, no, it's a container. There's a container rustic to this.
Rustic.
Is it a mall? That community in Gigiri, he said in the area I come from. It's not Kayole, right? So in that Gigiri, next to the embassy, next to the UN, there's this shopping center that is made out of containers. Okay, let me not call it kibanda. But when you walk into Anthony's shop, the value of the wine he has in that kibanda, right, is what's outstanding. I think he's being modest, but I think there's some importers who actually sell to him on request. Like he gets specific wines that are sent to him on request that you guys don't get anywhere else. I'm sorry. But you'll get them at Anthony's. And then, are you still the only person who has a Coravin distribution in Kenya? So you want to, what is the excuse for not serving us wine by the glass? You know, costs, sijui nini, right? So with the right tools, like a Coravin, yeah, something that has nitrogen capsules, it's a device.
Argon.
Okay, argon. Here, I think it's the word, right? So there's ways that more expensive bottles of wine can be sold by the glass at his kibanda, right? You see, that's why, again, we talked about, yes, these wines you sell on Jazza. Is it Jazza? Supermarket, huh? And all those places. But even in this Gigiri place, there's this experience he's creating that is only available to him. But if you want the Coravin and the capsule, of course, he'll sell them to you as well. But then again, that's how he's adding value in his establishment. And I know he does a lot of direct to consumer business for those wines that he's getting himself on allocation from the producers or the importers themselves. Nimekuza vizuri?
Yeah. I think I'll just add on to what Ngiri is saying. Since the topic is on elevation of customer experience, I think I got lost when I was talking about something else. So I was a visionary when I began the business. I suffered through oxidation of wine and everything. So what I did, I started experimenting with various wine preservation techniques. How can I open a bottle of wine and maximize on the sales without compromising the quality of the bottle? So when I did my research, I was like, this device, I can use it. So I started using the device in 2013. And since then, we sell, just imagine, I sell 18 wines by glass. 118 wines by glass. Just imagine the customer has variety. So that's what I was saying. The bigger the wine list, the bigger the bigger the win. Always sacrifice. I say, many businessmen are conscious. If I I open, like literally like last week, I opened a bottle for about 9,000 cost price. Yes. Just for clients to test cost price. I took it out of my stock. I said I won't feel the pain. There's that thing where you feel the pain.
Yeah, there's uchungu for 9K or the uchungu for
yes.
Sorry.
So I'm just saying back to Anjiru's elevate your customer experience. Offer like may have 118 wines by glass. Just CharChoma has different cuts. Different cuts of meat. So just find something. The mics are
So as Anthony's mic is coming back, you've touched on a pain point. I know I'm supposed to wrap up. A pain point, a huge pain point. You go to an establishment, if you want a house wine, you have one for red, one for white. Or maybe two for red if you want is sweet, one dry, and the same thing for white. It's a huge pain point. And if I want that Malbec or that other wine, I have to buy by the bottle. And also that's something I'm keen around how the industry is helping. In fact, a big player like Art Cafe why is it if I go to Art Cafe and I want house wine, I can only drink Frontera? Why? And it's a horrible Frontera. Yeah, sorry, but it's just like, I think the aspect of choice, and I'm really glad the establishment is bringing that. The other aspect he's brought in, which I think I touched on earlier, is around the tasting. You basically sunk 9,000 for tasting. We rarely get that opportunity. You're told if you want that one, you get it by the bottle, and if you don't like it, if you do, either way you pay for it. So let's think about how we can elevate our experience beyond, if I open this bottle in the end. Prosecco, you can't buy Prosecco by glass. You have to do a bottle. So also coming back to the aspect of responsible drinking, what are you pushing when you tell me I can only buy it by the bottle? And now to wrap up before Mwalimu punishes me, or maybe the punishment will come later. I think from what we've heard from this panel and the earlier panels is that the customer experience is everyone's job. Whether you're the distributor, whether you're or whether you're in the kitchen. Also, education builds loyalty. I think I've had a lot of that from Tony and Victoria. So customers return for how you make them feel and what you teach them. So this customer you were talking about left actually being more knowledgeable around what organic wine is. And then the aspect around of culture meeting commerce. So curated experiences are really, really helpful. I'm lucky, I'm fortunate. My experience and loving of wine has come from being able to visit wineries in various parts of the world. But now I want to be able to experience that even when I'm in Nairobi and I'm in an establishment, to feel that the same experience the whiskey drinker is having in terms of choice, or even craft beer, which has also really become a thing, is something that also I as a wine drinker can actually experience. Lastly, I'd like to really thank Victoria and Anthony. Believe it or not, we met virtually 2 days ago on WhatsApp. Only got to exchange emails yesterday in terms of how we are going to run this session. And I'm really, really grateful for all your inputs and making this happen. And thank you, Wanjiro, for trusting me with this.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Wait. Hold on. Ben, Yvonne, before I go, I have to just, I have my points here, and you guys have to listen and bear the brunt. Okay, here, I'll just go quick. So, customer experience is everyone's work. So make sure everyone rotates in your business. I watch this Michelin star, what are they called? Shows. You know, my dream is to have a Michelin star. Even CharChoma should have a Michelin star. Or, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. That's my dream. Food culinary. So that if that's the goal, make sure you see this Michelin star restaurants. They rotate.
Hata Mike zinatuambia.
They rotate. So make sure the dishwasher rotates with the wine steward. The wine steward rotates to the wait. Like everyone, it's a rotational job. No one has any work higher. Embracing AI in your business, that's a big deal. I don't know. We are trying to figure that out. Embracing AI. Some will be maybe useless so we need to be ahead of the game. How do we embrace AI in your business? Okay, by the glass selection, and then structures in business. The old school way used to have the GM, you know, the food and beverage manager, that's a boring way to think about the business. Now we embrace the new school way. The new school way is the GM can become the waiter. The waiter can become the GM. You know, don't just do things the old school way. The GM can go on the floor. The only guy who can go on the floor is a wine steward. So when the GM comes down to the level of the like me, I serve clients outside. Guys even ask me, who's the owner of that place? I just say, the owner is a white guy. He's, So I think also, Victoria, I'd like you to finish with CharChoma and say how you elevate customer experience.
I'll start with what Wanjiro had said. So we're a butchery style concept by the beach, and you come and get to pick your meat. You come and do, for a lot of us growing up, going out on a Sunday was in a butchery style restaurant, right? You go and say, nataka hiyo, nipatie quarter, right? So we try and recreate that experience. The difference is that we tell you what each of those cuts do for you in terms of flavor, in terms of texture. So for us is employing interaction in every single touch point. And that's the only way we can be able to co-create these experiences with our customers.
Awesome. Fun fact, Victoria is vegetarian. Wow. Do you trust a thing chef? No. Do you trust a vegetarian working in a butchery?
Yes.
So thank you so much, guys. My coffee, it doesn't end there, right? It doesn't end there. Whoever is going to go to Lavon today, unipeleke please tufunguliwe hiyo 9,000. Anyway, you'll have a photo, please, as you're coming in.
So you're welcome. It's the Trafford Elevation. I've opened it. So if you want to come and have a glass, you can. Yeah.
Call when you're near the US Embassy, then they'll give you directions to the Kibanda. Awesome. Please stand and have your photo taken, right?